Welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season and beyond. It is Monday, February 23rd, about 10:20 here on the East Coast, and we just saw a very busy weekend of college basketball. We saw the selection committee reveal their top 16 seeds on a Saturday, so that means a ton of stuff changed right after that Saturday. So that's how the show is going to look like today. We're going to start off talking about those top 16 seeds. Then we're going to talk about the games that happened following those games, which switch things up a little bit, but we're still basing everything off of those top 16 seed reveal, obviously. And then we're going to dive in and talk about the top 16 seeds as it stands now after that reveal. After the games, we'll talk about some bracketology, and then we will talk bubble watch, because the bubble is really starting to, some teams are starting to really move out of contention. San Diego State had a bad loss. VCU, I don't think, can quite get there. So there's pretty much like 7-ish teams vying for 4 spots right now. That's, of course, guessing that there's no bid stealers, which I'm sure we will have some. So we're going to talk about that bubble watch. We'll talk about some of the numbers behind it before closing out the show, just talking about the upcoming slate. Tonight on Monday, we have a big Monday between ranked on ranked opponents twice. We have one at Allen Fieldhouse yet again with Houston. And then we have North Carolina and Louisville. Tuesday's okay. Wednesday, we have a really good day of college basketball yet again. So that's going to be the outline of the show today. Before diving into it, just be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Turn on the post notifications, as we are under a week until March. Conference tournaments are going to start coming up. Get that ESPN Plus subscription, like I said last time, because mid-major conference tournaments are going to be on there, and it's going to start getting really fun. Follow us on Instagram for all our content at Bracket Science with 2 S's, and a new one. Go and check out our website, bracketscience.weebly.com. It's down below in the description. All our content just condensed into one. Bracketology. We're having a coaching carousel discussions on there. I'm going to post, predictions for coaching carousel stuff, and then unfortunately, I hate looking forward to it, but I don't look forward to it, but it's going to happen. In a little over a month, we will start doing transfer portal rankings. So to keep up with all that stuff, be sure to check out our website. Let's dive in and talk about the selection committee's top 4 seeds. Like I said, this was Saturday at 12:30. A lot changed. Actually, you know what? Not a terrible amount changed. Some did change, but obviously at the one line we're going to talk about it change. But here is what they were at. I'll just label them all the way through before talking about. I think there's one little thing of inconsistency that I'll talk about on here, but overall, I didn't think it was bad whatsoever. I had every single one of these teams in the top 16, other than Virginia. I had Alabama over Virginia. That's going to be one of my other ones. And then I just didn't have Iowa State as a 1 seed. I had Houston as a 1 seed. So pretty much, similar to what a lot of bracketologists were thinking. But the 1 seeds were Michigan and Duke and Arizona. No surprise there. Then the surprising one was Iowa State as your 4th 1 seed. Even more surprising to me was UConn as the first 2 seed over Houston, 2nd 2 seed, Illinois 3rd 2 seed, and Purdue as your 4th 2 seed. Florida was your first 3 seed. So they did say the selection vice chair or whatever he was, did say that they had 2 brackets made up for the Purdue versus Indiana game that happened on Friday. Like, they finalized their top seeds before Friday's game between Purdue and Indiana. So I believe if Indiana would have beat Purdue, although Purdue drilled them, Florida probably would have been the last 2 seed. But Florida ends up your first 3 seed, Kansas as your next 3 seed, Nebraska 3rd, and Gonzaga right behind them. 4 seed, their first 4 seed was Texas Tech. I was glad to see them do this. I gave props to the committee for this one. They did say they had him as the last 3 seed and then dropped him to a 4 seed because of the severity of JT Toppin's injury. I don't necessarily agree with that. However, I don't necessarily think that Texas Tech should have been above Gonzaga after suffering that loss to Arizona State. I know they have 3 of the best wins in the country, so maybe that was going to boost them. However, I had them as a 4 seed. They didn't end up being a 4 seed. Michigan State as their next 4 seed, then Vanderbilt, and then they did have Virginia over Alabama, and Arkansas was the other team that they mentioned that was next up. So the overall, I thought it was a pretty good job. The only one, I'm perfectly fine with Iowa State over Houston. Seth Davis, who I don't agree with on much, was on the show, and he said, well, Houston on the team sheet metrics has 6 of 7 metrics better than Iowa State. And the committee chair basically just said, yeah, but Iowa State just beat Houston. For those who listen to the show, no, I'm not a huge believer in head-to-head when it's at a home court environment. So it's something when we're doing bracketology, we're predicting what the committee is going to. Obviously, the committee values this. So I got to start incorporating that a little bit more, even if I don't value it that much, because it's like last year we saw Florida lose at Tennessee by 20. We saw Tennessee lose at Florida by, what was it, 20 or 30 or something. That's how important a home court advantage is. So that's why I do use it for some things. We'll talk about it with Cincinnati and West Virginia a little bit later. It's fine if it's like that's the one thing differentiating the two, if it's really close in resumes. However, Houston, I did think had a much better resume, so I didn't think the head-to-head should be in effect because it's your overall body of work is what it's supposed to be. But however, I was fine with having Iowa State over Houston. To me, having UConn over Houston is highly questionable, especially if you put Virginia over Alabama. And what do I mean by this? Just going over the numbers. The reason they said UConn over Houston, because of the strength of record metric, the wins above bubble metric. They were fourth in both of them. That's a 1 seed. I believe they were sixth in KPI at the time. They're now fourth. Houston was a little bit worse in these metrics, however, better in every single predictive metric. And the other example they gave was UConn being having a better overall non-conference wins, which is fine. However, there's no argument UConn has much worse losses. UConn has a quadrant 2 loss. They lost that game to Creighton. Actually, you know what? That now moved to quadrant 3. It was quadrant 2 at the time. So they now have a quadrant 3 loss. Houston, is 15-4 inside the first 2 quadrants. UConn is 14-2. Both teams have 7 quad 1 wins. So you're differentiating very closely there. However, just with that loss being by far the worst loss, and Houston's losses have come to, the top teams in the sport, and it's been on the road, other than that game that just happened against Arizona, but that happened after the selection committee. The only reason I have a problem with it is because they did put Virginia over Alabama, and I'm not even saying Virginia shouldn't be ahead of Alabama. I just think there's got to be a little consistency with this committee because Alabama had a better strength of record, had better wins above bubble, had better non-conference wins by a lot over Virginia. However, they put Virginia over Alabama. Like I said, I'm fine with Virginia being ahead of Alabama. However, I think if you put Virginia over Alabama, you had to put Houston over UConn. It's because UConn, the reasoning they gave would be the same reasoning that Alabama should be ahead of Virginia, if that makes sense. Like I said, overall, it's fine. I'm splitting hairs here. I'm not losing sleep over it because obviously a lot of stuff is going to continue to change. However, if that's how they're going to judge it, we'll see. And I know it's different from thing to thing. Like UConn to Houston is a different scenario than Virginia to Alabama, but just the reasoning they gave kind of, in my opinion, put made up for a little bit of inconsistency there. But oh well, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Let's now move on and let's talk about what happened after this, because of course they come out with it on a Saturday and then it just gets completely flipped around because a ton of huge results. We had what I believed all 4 1 seeds at the time playing each other. However, Houston ended up being a 2 seed. So let's talk about the results and how it's going to influence things for their seeding. And then we'll talk our bracketology. So number 3, Duke did take down Michigan in Washington, D.C., 68-63. Duke and Michigan will flip. So Duke will now be your number 1 overall seed. Michigan will be your number 2 overall seed. Cam Boozer, 18 points, 10 rebounds. He actually had 7 assists. I know I put 6 assists on this graphic. That's a typo. 7 assists. He was fantastic. The more concerning thing, Duke out-rebounds Michigan by 12 in this game. Michigan's front court has been the story the entire season. Yaxel Lendeborg was really good in the first half, had 21.7 rebounds on the game. He had 16 of his points in the first half, and then they kind of shut him down in the second half. It's weird. Duke has just kind of been flying under the radar this entire season just because we look at last year's team and we're like, God, they had the number 1 overall pick. They had, Con Knippel, who's like second next to Cooper Flagg in Rookie of the Year in the NBA right now. Kaman Malowich was a lottery pick. Sion James got drafted. Who else am I missing? I'm missing someone else in there. The team was like absolutely stacked. They had one of the best KenPom. They might have had the best KenPom rating ever. So it's like we're kind of, I think, comparing this year's team to last year's team. And it's like this year's team is not as talented as last year's team. Not many teams ever are as talented as last year's team. So that's something we should kind of take into consideration. However, last year's team just couldn't really close in the last couple minutes of games. This year's team seems to be a little bit different. I know they suffered that one to Texas Tech where they lost it late, and even the one to North Carolina. However, closing out a game like this is a big one. Number 1 team in the country on a neutral floor. Obviously, there was a little bit more Duke fans there than Michigan fans. But Cam Boozer, what else can you say? He's just a winner. He wins everywhere he goes. They close out games. He's dominant down low. He is the most mature freshman I think I have probably ever seen. Like you see the talent with Darren Peterson. I know it's a whole nother story. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. You saw the talent last year with Cooper Flagg. Cam Boozer is just so mature down low. He is a tremendous college basketball player. Duke, your number 1 overall seed right now. Duke will also be number 1 in the AP poll when this updates in about 2.5 hours here. Let's move on and talk about the other top 4 matchup where number 4 Arizona went to Houston, beat them 73-66. Arizona did not have Koa Pete. Arizona did not have Aristode. Arizona had Braden Burries playing with flu-like symptoms. Take hints, Darren Peterson. That's how you play through flu-like symptoms, to at least be a body out there that stretches out the floor, because Braden Burries, their leading scorer, one of their best three-point shooters, stretched the floor. He made an impact, wasn't good. You could tell he was sick, but still played in the game and helped them get to a victory. But Anthony Del Orso, 22 points in this one, was knocking down shots, looked really good. Ivan Karchenkov, 16 points, 9 rebounds, had a ton of deflections on the defensive end. Everyone's been talking about Karchenkov, how he's a tremendous defender. He is. He's a really good defender in this one. So playing without Koa Pete, if there's a team that is fine with losing a player as good as Koa Pete, it's Arizona, just because of their front court depth and because you're literally bringing Toby Awaka off the bench, which is as scary as it comes. Toby Awaka was really good in this game. Mo Krivas didn't have that much of an impact, but even when he doesn't have an impact, he has an impact. He's huge. He moves good for a center. This Arizona team has the capability to win the national championship. When you win without, two players who play significant minutes and your leading scorer with flu-like symptoms in the game, not playing well, and you have, the Anthony Del Orsos, the Ivan Karchenkov step up, Jaden Bradley, we know what he is. It's so important to have a freshman, or to have a veteran leading guard that has been there before. And, Jaden Bradley was the point guard of that Alabama team that was the number 1 overall seed a couple years ago with Brandon Miller. He's got experience. He's really good. This team just beats you with physicality. They don't shoot threes. They've now beaten 3 AP top 3 opponents, which is just absolutely absurd. This team is fantastic. Arizona, a legit national championship threat. For Houston, they got out physicaled in this game. The way to beat Houston is get JoJo Tugler in a little bit of foul trouble. And let's be honest, he was probably going to get in foul trouble in this game, going against Krivas and against Awaka. Imagine if they had Koa Pete. If he's going against those 3, your main shot blocker, he's maybe one of the best defenders in the country. Having him down low, getting him in foul trouble. I'm a little bit worried about the front court depth for Houston. I can even say maybe just the depth in general. And even Kelvin Sampson has been, public about this, talking about this, that his depth is the biggest concern. Khalifa Sacco is a good player. He's not Javier Francis or Jawan Roberts. Those were veteran guys. Khalifa Sacco just now kind of starting to find his role. He's fine. He can settle the job. However, if JoJo Tugler gets in trouble, in foul trouble, it's Khalifa Sacco who's got to take over these games, and he's just not quite there to the level of Toby Awaka, to the level of Mo Krivas and obviously Koa Pete. But it's just the rest of the depth. It's like if Kingston Flemings isn't making shots, which he was fine in this one, but wasn't Kingston Flemings like, where's the offense going to come from? Emmanuel Sharp had some moments. Milo Suzan had some moments. However, without Kingston Flemings playing well, and if JoJo Tugler's in trouble, I'm a little bit concerned about Houston going up against some of the top dogs, going up against the Michigans, who are huge, physical, going up against the Dukes, huge, physical, Arizona, obviously. Even other teams such like, we'll say like North Carolina, if they get Caleb Wilson back, Caleb Wilson and Vasar, huge up front. What if they get JoJo Tugler in foul trouble? That's the one thing I'm looking out for matchup-wise in March Madness for this Houston team. They're still obviously really good. They're going to be a 2 seed. Out as of now, they can still climb up to the 1 line. Arizona, your number 1, one of the number 1 seeds as of now. Let's stick it in the Big 12. Number 6, Iowa State at number 23, BYU. BYU gets the job done 79-69. AJ Demancin, my God, 29 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. It's starting to, I'm not a huge NBA draft guy. I do pay attention, like you can tell, like Darren Pearson, AJ Demancin, they're going to be NBA guys. As good as Cam Boozer is, and he's been the best college basketball player this season, you see the upside with AJ Demancin and Darren Peterson. I'm wondering if it's getting really close in these NBA draft circles between Demancin and Peterson. Demancin is just effortless. He's like, he reminds me of a deer out there, just prances around, just a crazy athlete. He was fantastic. Last year with Richie Saunders just being like the everything guy, they were like BYU was a top 10 team to close out the season last year. They made the Sweet 16. They were really, really good at the end of the season because they just basically started running everything for Richie Saunders. Now that Richie Saunders is out, and I'm not even saying like if AJ Demancin was out, I think it'd be the same conversation we'd be having with Richie Saunders taking over these games. I'm curious if BYU will, maybe be it obviously hurts to lose Richie Saunders. Like, don't get me wrong. It hurts. But will they just have more of an identity now because it's just AJ Demancin, go get us 30? Rob Wright, go get us 30 on nights that AJ Demancin doesn't go get us 30. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to get everyone involved, that's kind of a storyline I'm looking out for. Like, obviously, their upside is so much higher with Richie Saunders. And like I said, we'd be having the same conversation if AJ Demancin was hurt and Richie Saunders was there. That's how highly I think of Richie Saunders. But maybe this will force them into a little bit of a different identity because it hadn't been going well for this BYU team over the last little bit of stretch. But they pick up a huge win just for momentum purposes. For Iowa State, the big concern about Iowa State is winning away from Hilton. That's why I was really, really surprised for them to be the number one seed, the last number one seed, because they really, they've won games outside of Hilton, but they definitely are a lot better at Hilton. That's the credit to that home court environment. I think this team's really good. Like I said, I've been saying I'm going to take them at least the Elite Eight, depending on matchups. All season long, I think this team's really good, but we'll see what they can do on neutral floors. I would love to see them go pick up some of these road wins, like Arizona went and won at BYU. I'd like to see Iowa State do the same thing. All right, also in the Big 12, the most surprising result, Cincinnati wins at Allen Fieldhouse, 84-68. Domination. Mustafa Cham, 28 points, 8 rebounds, just dominated the entire way. The whole story's been on Kansas, but let's talk about Cincinnati first. You can't help but feel good for Wes Miller in this situation. He has been through the absolute ringer this season, the past couple seasons. It went viral where he was talking after the West Virginia loss. He's like, you guys should be upset. I'm going to get this figured out. It kind of seemed like a little bit of a desperation call just for his job, because he is like, if they don't make the tournament, I fully expect Cincinnati to move on. But he has become a really well-liked character. This Cincinnati team is not that bad. Like, they are 46th at KenPom right now. They're 38th at Torvik. They're not dead for an at-large. I don't have them in the next 4 out. I would have them as my 9th team out. We'll talk about why in a little bit here, but they're not completely gone. Like, this team has some serious upside. If you're looking for a team that's kind of NC State-like a couple seasons ago, where like you got to win a power conference tournament to get to the NCAA tournament, it could be the Cincinnati team. They're starting to play a little grittier. Sincere Harris was really good on the defensive end in this game. They kind of shut down Darren Peterson. They shut down this Kansas offensive attack. This was a trap game for Kansas. That should be noted. It was very much so a trap game, as they obviously tonight play Houston. And then who they played that game before that? Was it Arizona that they just played? Iowa State. Yeah. They played Arizona, then Iowa State, and then Cincinnati thrown in the middle, and then at Houston. So definitely a trap game. But the credit is to Cincinnati. Cincinnati just imposed its will this entire way. I kind of hope Cincinnati gets their way into the tournament, because I think as of right now, like over the past month or so, Cincinnati's played like a top 15 team over at barttorvik.com. That's obviously separating a lot of data. That's only a month as of the whole season, but they're playing pretty well for Kansas. The whole story is Darren Peterson. Everyone's talking about it. The team's not as good when Darren Peterson is in the game. Dick Vitale, who is like the nicest guy on the entire planet, is calling it out, saying, maybe it's time for a divorce, is what he called it. Just let Darren Peterson prepare for the draft. And this team, they beat Arizona without Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson plays and you lose at home by 16 to Cincinnati. So I understand the concern. It's obvious that Darren Peterson is like a unbelievable talent. It's just the whole saga that's going on with him with the injuries. Is he injured? Is he not? He's pulling himself out of games. It's like they can't get obviously any flow. They have more flow when he's not in there, because when he's in there, he has to have the ball, and he's unbelievable. I'm really curious to see if Bill Self really switches things up after this game. For example, this is going to sound absolutely crazy. Don't flame me. I would almost look at starting Melvin Council and bringing Darren Peterson off the bench. I know the more probably realistic thing would be starting Darren Peterson and bringing Melvin Council off the bench, just almost splitting the minutes, because these two guys just can't really play together. I just think Melvin Council deserves to start and deserves to be that guy. They're going to have to play together at some point. That doesn't mean, Darren Peterson's going to play 20 minutes. Melvin Council plays 20 minutes. I don't think this is going to happen. I think they're just going to try and work things out. And I'm not even saying I would make that happen, but I'm curious to see if they keep struggling like this. Do you, play Darren Peterson if he's healthy, playing 30 minutes? He plays 20 minutes without Melvin Council. They play 10 minutes together. Melvin Council plays 20 minutes without Darren Peterson. They play 10 minutes together, something like that. I don't know, because they're just not working out. Whenever Darren Peterson is playing, Melvin Council is not playing good Floyd Badunga is good no matter what because he's just a shot blocker, rim protector, rebounder, dunker. He's going to be fine, but even Trey White not playing as well when Darren Pearson's on the floor, just not as cohesive. Curious to see what Bill Self does. I don't think this is going to happen. Like, I don't think like Darren Pearson's going to come off the bench. He's one of the best talents we've ever seen. However, it's not working right now. So we'll see if he thinks about switching things up. I know it sounds crazy, but we'll see. All right, let's move on. Number 10, Illinois did lose at UCLA 95-94. Donovan Dent had 14 points, 15 assists. Good games all the way around. For UCLA, individual performances. Xavier Booker was really good coming off the bench. Bilodeau, had that little moment with Mick Crone at the end of the game, but he was good. He had 18 points in this one. Eric Daly had 20. UCLA, this was the win that they needed. They're inside the tournament right now as a bye team. They're praying that they're playing on the West Coast because they are two completely different teams on the West Coast and on the East Coast. I can't help but think that that's probably because of a little bit of a whiny coach. If the coach is whining about going to the East Coast, so are probably the players. We're making excuses for it. But Illinois is still perfectly fine as a 2 seed right now, but UCLA gets the job done. Tennessee wins at number 19 Vanderbilt, 69-65. I'm going to have a big thought on the SEC here in a little bit. I'll do it after. As you can see, the middle of this graphic is mostly SEC. I'll talk about it after that, but tremendous win for Tennessee. They're playing fantastic. Jacoby Gillespie was good in this one. Nate Ament wasn't awesome, but Tennessee playing really well. Like I said, I'll talk about them here a little bit more. I'll give them their love. Number 14, Virginia beats Miami 86-83. Virginia just squeaks by these games. I don't know if that's nerve-wracking for Virginia fans or if that's like, hey, we win close games. We're gritty. We're well coached. As they are, I saw a tweet. Someone said, like, they're on an 8-game winning streak. I'm sorry, I don't remember who tweeted it. I should have wrote it down. I got to get better at giving credit. They're on an 8-game winning streak and went from 17th to 18th at KenPom in that stretch. And he's like, how is that possible? KenPom's a fraud or something like that. It's because they're high spreads in this game and they're squeaking by them. They're winning every single one of them, but they're squeaking by them. And how you win these games is influenced by KenPom, as it should be. But Virginia, they're playing well. They're either one game or half a game back from Duke right now. So good win there. Number 16, North Carolina did win at Syracuse 77-64, no doubt in this one. Henry Vasar did come back. Good to see him back on the floor. Had 19 points. He's really good. Syracuse is just in terrible shape right now as a program. They got to move on, look for a new coach. All right, let's talk about the SEC. Kentucky and Auburn. What a controversial game. Auburn gets the job done 75-74. The thing that went viral, Colin Chandler, is called for an offensive foul at the end of the game. Kentucky was up 1. They're trying to inbound it. Colin Chandler called for a foul. I'm of the belief it shouldn't have been called. I know some people are saying, look, Colin Chandler shouldn't have done it. Like, he shouldn't have extended that arm whatsoever in that situation. However, in my opinion, there wasn't enough there to call a foul in that situation because it was like, you lightly got tapped with an extended arm and you fall all the way back. I don't think it should have been called. However, Colin Chandler probably should have taken a little better of approach there, knowing the situation. And then Auburn, Keyshawn Murphy had 25 points, 10 rebounds in this game, was awesome. Had a little bunny at the end of the game that missed, but luckily Elijah Freeman was there for Auburn to get a putback. If Auburn loses this game, they're outside the tournament looking, and they win this game. It's a quad 1 game. They are in the tournament as a bye team. So this was a huge, huge one for Auburn. They needed it more than Kentucky. Mark Pope was obviously not happy at the end of the game, had that, little moment where he said, the ref screwed us or whatever. I'll paraphrase. I would have been frustrated too. If I was Mark Pope, I probably would have called out the refs in that situation. If I was Mark Pope, even if it was, we'll classify it as a bang bang call. I don't think it should have been called, like I said, but I do see how it could have been called. Yeah, that was a big moment to let the whistle, really be the deciding factor of the game. But Otega Owe was really good in this one. Had 29 points, which was a career high for him. 7 rebounds, but Auburn gets the job done. This doesn't hurt Kentucky whatsoever. They're still fine. Auburn needed it badly. All right, let's try and get through these other ones a little quicker. As Missouri did lose at number 20 Arkansas, as you'd kind of expect. Billy Richmond had 21 points in this one. Darius Acuff was terrible in this one, only 20 points. That's sarcasm. He's awesome. Only had 20 points in this one as he'd been on a tear. Arkansas gets the job done. Missouri, Mark Mitchell, 26 points, 8 assists. We'll talk about Missouri here in the bubble talk a little bit. Texas loses at Georgia 91-80. So I had Georgia as the last or the first bye team, or last bye team, however you want to phrase it, like 4 teams in from they were a bye as like a 10 seed. guess that's a better way to phrase it. This just kind of flipped them, in my opinion. Like Georgia is now like the last 9 seed, Texas as the first 10 seed, as a last bye team. So they're still perfectly fine. Like Georgia, this is a win that they needed. I think both teams are comfortably going to be in the tournament. Like I said, the bubble really starting to separate, and these guys are in pretty good shape right now. Number 12, Florida won at Ole Miss, 94-75. Florida on an absolute tear as of late. Number 25, Alabama won at LSU, 90-83. Good win there for Alabama. And then Texas A&M won at Oklahoma. This was a huge one for Texas A&M, 75-71. This boosted Texas A&M out of the last 4 byes as a comfortable bye team. Let's get Texas A&M in the tournament. They deserve it this season. So my thought on the SEC, so the whole story this season has been about, it's Florida, that is a national championship threat. I mean, I guess even before that, it was like this team this conference may not have any national championship threats. Now it's kind of Florida national championship threat, and then the rest. I think Tennessee, Arkansas, and Alabama are all underrated. I think all 3 of these teams, I mean, especially in the AP poll, like Arkansas is 20, Alabama is 25. Tennessee unranked is just ridiculous. They should not be unranked. They've been playing really well. Tennessee's 14th at KenPom. Like this team is on a tear. Arkansas 17th at KenPom, Alabama 20th at KenPom. So that's showing the AP poll has them a little underrated. I think any one of these teams can make the Final Four. I really am starting to really buy into, Tennessee is the one where they seem more of a high floor team to me. Like Arkansas and Alabama have the offensive upside. Alabama's been playing really well since Bediako left. Maybe that was a little bit of a thing, but they are starting to really put things together on the offensive end. Arkansas, Darius Acuff should be the SEC Player of the Year. He's been on an absolute tear. They have offensive upside. They have some great defensive pieces as well. Tennessee, like I said, I think they got the highest floor out of these teams. I will probably be taking Tennessee to the Sweet 16. It's a great season if you make the Sweet 16. If you're Tennessee, Nate Ament has been on tear. He didn't play great in this game against Vanderbilt, but he's been playing really well. The reason I was a little lower on Tennessee, first, I will say I was high on them in the preseason. I really liked them. And then I kind of just wrote them off a little bit because Jacoby Gillespie, I thought he was going to be like a potential like first team All-American kind of guy. I thought he was going to be that good. He hasn't quite been that. Like Nate Ament has been the alpha on this team. But as Jacoby Gillespie is starting to play a little bit better, like he hasn't been played bad all season. He's averaging like 18 a game. He's been good, but I think we can all agree Nate Ament is their most important player on this team as of now. And I fully expected that to be Gillespie. So Gillespie hasn't been as terrific as I thought he was going to be. That's just how high I was on him in the preseason. But with him playing fine and Nate Ament taking this big jump at the end, everyone knows I love Felix Okpara. He's a fantastic. Estrella has been dealing with some injuries. If they can get him healthy, they got the physicality around them with Abram. We'll see about this Tennessee team, but I think this team's going to get to the Sweet 16. I'm starting to really like this team. All right, let's move on. Talk about West Virginia losing to TCU, 60-54. West Virginia pretty much all but done in terms of the bubble. They're not quite done yet, but pretty much that loss against Utah was just too bad. TCU, good win. Keeps you in the field right now, but very, very close. USC loses at home to Oregon. You can't have it. You cannot have it. So we talked about how, you know what? Let's save this conversation for the bubble talk. Let's get through the rest of these games. But you can't lose a home game to Oregon. Oregon's been the worst team in the Big Ten this season. I know Penn State will have something to say about that, but Oregon's been terrible as well. They suffer a loss. UConn wins at Villanova. So with Iowa State losing, UConn was ahead of Houston, but Houston losing as well. UConn's going to be your next number 1 seed. They're back in the 1 seed conversation, even with that loss turning to a quad 3. Like I said, I don't think they should have been there. I think with Iowa State loss to, I don't know. It's really close, but UConn as of now, because of what the selection committee said, will be a number 1 seed. St. John's dominates Creighton, was not letting Creighton come in and give them a quad 3 loss. Utah State loses at Nevada. Utah State still in the conversation, or still in the tournament as like an 8 seed right now. San Diego State loses to Colorado State. So we mentioned this one at the top of the show. San Diego State, not in good shape for an at-large berth whatsoever. Clemson continues to keep losing. They lose at home to Florida State. So we talked about Cincinnati, been on an absolute tear, a team that hasn't been good all season, but on a tear. Florida State's playing really good as well under Luke Laux, but Clemson really, really struggling. Clemson going to be that team that's probably like a 9 seed, and they're like a 7-point underdog in the first round to an 8 seed. Just not playing good basketball right now. Liberty suffers their first loss of the season in Conference USA. The home loss to Western Kentucky, 94-73. I didn't watch this game or even really look at the box score because the Liberty's already clinched Conference USA regular season. It really doesn't matter. However, they are like They're not going to get that large, but they're actually kind of close. Like maybe, I'm sure they're still playing for that. Like in their minds, they probably believe it. So I don't think they would bench everyone, just because, I mean, they were undefeated in Conference USA, but losing this one's tough. UC San Diego wins at UC Irvine, 71-69. This Big West race is just eating itself up. Hawaii lost a game earlier in the week. The Big West is very complicated right now. And of course, UC Irvine loses at home, as everyone, as pretty much a lot of people I know, I will say, have a lot of bets on UC Irvine to win the Big West. Then Winthrop loses at High Point. These were your top two teams in the Big South. 89-87, very close, good game there. High Point is now in control. Then let's just briefly go back. So we mentioned that Purdue did beat Indiana 93-64 domination. St. Louis beat VCU 88-75. This VCU still in our first four out, but they're not in good shape. They just don't have enough. They don't have enough quad one opportunities in the A10 the rest of the way. I don't know if they can get there. We'll talk about them here a little bit in the bubble. But St. Louis with a good win there. There was obviously that little brawl at the end, Robbie Avila in the center of it. But St. Louis gets the win. Miami of Ohio stays undefeated with a win over Bowling Green. Then let's go to Sunday real quick with what just happened yesterday. Ohio State loses at number 15 Michigan State 66-60. Ohio State now 0-9 inside quad one. Ohio State does not have John Mobley. Devin Royal also did not play. He pulled the Darren Peterson. I'm just kidding. He did have flu-like symptoms though and didn't play in that game. And then Iowa lost at number 24 Wisconsin. 84-71. Both teams like eight-ish seeds right now. UAB won at Memphis. Memphis is 12-15 this season. They are not in good shape. Wright State, your leader in the Horizon League, lost a home game to Robert Morris, evening things up atop the Horizon League. Alrighty, that is everything that happened. Next, we are going to talk about our top seeds as it stands now, based on what the committee did and based on the results that just happened. But that's going to come after a break. On the other side of the break, we'll talk some bracketology. We'll talk some bubble watch. We'll be right back. It is nearly impossible to find affordable golf instruction. Well, not any longer. Introducing virtual swing reviews by PGA certified Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction. Just send a video of your swing to receive feedback to fix your swing in minutes. You don't need a $100 hour-long lesson when the instructor knows how to correct your habits after just one swing. Follow Brandon Jadich Golf Instruction on Instagram with the link below in the description and send a message saying swing review for just a $10 swing review, or comment under this YouTube video saying swing review. 2026 is a year of saving money and improvement. So start now with this limited time offer to grow your golf game. Alrighty, here is my top seeds as it stands right now. This is as of last night, but I did update it today, just double checked. This is how I would have it right now. So Duke obviously is your number one seed. They flip with Michigan. Number two overall seed, Arizona, still right there is your third number one seed. Any one of these teams still has a case to end up being the number one overall seed. UConn has your fourth number one seed. Even with that loss turning to quad three, they had them over Iowa State. They had them they had them just behind Iowa State and ahead of Houston. With that win at Villanova, quad one win. Iowa State and Houston losing. Those are your first two seeds, Iowa State, Houston. Purdue jumps Illinois. Illinois is your second, or as your last number two seed after that loss to UCLA. And I will say Illinois and Florida, very, very close, but I would go Illinois in the scenario right now with, actually, you know what? I'm actually going to compare their resumes just to tell you how close it is as I pull up this graphic right here. So Illinois has a little bit of a little bit better predictive or resume-based metrics, excuse me. So they have an average of 9.7 compared to Florida 10.3. Illinois 5.3 in predictives compared to Florida 5. Split in very close hairs here, but when you go to quad 1A with Illinois 6-4 in quad 1A compared to Florida being 2-3. Florida is 8-5 in quad one though overall compared to Illinois 7-5. Illinois 13-6 inside the first two quadrants. Florida 15-6, so it's close, but with a better resume-based metric, 7th in WAB compared to Florida being 11th is why I ended up with Illinois above them, but it is very, very close. All right, let's go back to this graphic. So Florida is your first number 3 seed, Nebraska right behind them. Gonzaga doesn't move. I dropped Kansas to the last 3 seed. I'm not real confident that this is where they would be because I don't really know what to think of Kansas's resume right now. That loss was only a quad 2 loss. Like it wasn't that bad of a loss. And that's their first loss outside the first 2 quadrants, which is why I think it's just so It just doesn't happen very often. Kansas loses at home, especially to an unranked team who's not going to be in the tournament. However, it's only a quad 2 loss on the metrics. They're still 6th in KPI, which is strength of record metric, 15th in overall strength of record, 13th in wins above bubble, 5-4 inside a quad 1A. I would still have them as a 3 seed. I don't think they would boost Texas Tech up, but it's close. Texas Tech is your first number 4 seed, as they were. Michigan State as the next number 4 seed, as they were. That win against Ohio State didn't quite really boost them that much. Just a quad 2 win for them. Virginia as your 4 seed, they were above Alabama, and now Alabama does move into that 4 slot with Tennessee beating Vanderbilt, so Vanderbilt drops. Up next, I did jump Tennessee above Arkansas. Just because Tennessee's resume has really taken a big jump as of late. So let's compare those two metrics, because I know Arkansas fans might not like it, but it's pretty close. So resume, you can find them Tennessee at 17, Arkansas at 20. Resume-based metrics for an average of 17.7 for Tennessee, Arkansas at 19, so better there. Predictive metrics, or even what separates them a little bit more. Tennessee, an average of 13, 14th at KenPom, 13th at Torvik, while Arkansas is 19.7. So they're better in both resume-based metric averages and predictive averages. I understand that, and plus Tennessee is 5-5 inside quad 1A compared to Arkansas being 2-6. However, you go to the full quad 1, Arkansas is 6-7 compared to Tennessee being 5-6. So close in terms of the quadrant records, but in terms of better resume average and better predictive average is why I did jump Tennessee over Arkansas, even though the committee did have Arkansas as, one of the teams that was just left out. But I do think Tennessee did enough with that win to jump them. Then Vanderbilt right behind them, and then St. John's right behind Vanderbilt. St. John's is another weird resume. I thought they would maybe mention them, Tennessee and St. John's. I thought they would maybe mention them on the show because I thought they're close. Like St. John's to me is closer to Alabama than they are to, even though Alabama did win at St. John's, than they are to being the second 6 seed, because Louisville would be my first 6 seed. They're really close as well. But to be in the second 6 seed, these teams have kind of separated. These 4 seeds and 5 seeds are pretty good, in my opinion. At least I'll even condense that a little bit more. I really like the 5 seeds. I like Tennessee. I like Arkansas. Vanderbilt can make some noise with their guard play, and St. John's is dominating right now. So this is how I believe it stands right now as the top 4 seeds after that committee reveal and the results. Let's now move on to the bubble. So this is where, it condensed quite a bit. So I'm going to cut it off after the first 4 out. Like I really, believe it or not, the next 4 out of San Diego State, Cal, Seton Hall, and West Virginia, I didn't change anything. This is the exact same thing I had because they've even separated a little bit from the teams behind them. I will mention Cincinnati, and I'll talk about them here in a little bit once we go through the graphic. But your last 4 buys, like I said, I did flip Georgia. I had Georgia in this spot. Flip them with Texas. Texas now in the last 4 buys. Auburn, I know people aren't going to like it, but they're still fine right now in terms of the tournament. They've played the number 1 schedule in the entire country. They're 39th in strength of record, 39th in wins above bubble. Usually want to be inside like the top 45-ish to feel really good, and they have they're 33rd in KPI. So they're still in fine shape. They would be in the tournament. I know they have a lot of losses. UCLA, after that win, jumps into the last 4 buys instead of the last 4 in. Big win there, decent predictives, but they're fine. Indiana is a team that I would be a little bit careful on. Indiana, like we said, they just suffered that 29-point loss to Purdue. So let's actually pull up Indiana's resume here. So this will be, the bottom graphic of not in the top 30. They're 36th in the net. So look at their resume-based metrics. 51st in KPI, 42 in strength of record, 43rd in wins above bubble. So like I said, this wins above bubble metric and strength of record metric are very, very highly used. And then they're inside the top 45. So I have them as a buy team right now. Predictives are good. Average of 34. That's pretty good. That gets you in the tournament. Look at their quadrant wins. They're 4-10 inside the first 2 quadrants. However, the strength of record kind of evens out these quadrant wins. Like, not all quad 1 games are created equal. Not all quad 2 games are created equal. They only have 2 quad 1 wins, and they've had 12 opportunities, 2-10 in quad 1. Now, last year, North Carolina had 12 quad 1 opportunities, only won 1 of them and got in the tournament. Should they have? Probably not, but they were inside the tournament. So I think Indiana's fine right now. That would be a little bit careful. 4-10 inside the first 2 quadrants, and I'll even split it off a little further. 10-10 inside the first 3 quadrants, only 500. Indiana is not quite a lock to make the NCAA tournament, but they're still fine. Like I said, this bubble is terrible this season. I got Santa Clara comfortably in, and I don't love it because they really haven't picked up any awesome wins. They have the win against St. Mary's, which is a quad one win. That's their only quad one win. And they do have the quad four loss to Loyola Chicago. They're 7-1 in quad two, though, which is pretty good for a bubble team. For 8-5 inside the first two quadrants, there's not a lot of meat in the bubble right now. So I'm going to give it to Santa Clara as your first one. Next up would be Missouri. Missouri is 40th in strength of record, 42nd in wins above bubble. So like I said, that usually is pretty much good enough to get you in the tournament. Predictives are not good. They're an average of 47.7. That's not great. That's usually outside. So that's probably going to get you to Dayton. Prove yourself. The predictives are saying you're not this good, but you got to prove yourself and play your way into the tournament. I like this Missouri team. I'm kind of hoping they get in. I think they got some talent with Mark Mitchell and Pierce there. Ohio State, they lose, but they're now in the tournament, in my opinion. Because I had USC as they were in my last four in, and then they lost that home game to Oregon, so I dropped them to out as of now. And then Ohio State was my first team out, so that actually jumped them in. So you would think it would go TCU and Ohio State. My reasoning behind this is because I think if it was like USC versus Ohio State, well, that's probably a bad example because Ohio State beat USC. But all right, say TCU versus Ohio State, last team in. Who deserves to be in? TCU has won quad one games. Ohio State has not. That's why I think if you're picking the last team, I think TCU would be ahead of Ohio State. Hopefully this is making sense. However, if both of these teams in, I think Ohio State would be the better seeded team, even though they're both 11 seeds and would actually play each other in this situation. So it's like you're splitting hairs here, but I would think that this would get them there because they have a better strength of record at 45 compared to TCU's 47 wins above bubble. Ohio State also 45th. And TCU 49. So they're better in both those scenarios. However, Ohio State has not proven they can beat the best teams. 0-9 inside of quad one. TCU is 4-7 inside of quad one. Now, TCU does also have a quad three and a quad four loss. So I'm not saying 100% if you have one team that the committee has to pick between Ohio State and TCU. I'm not saying that they would pick TCU 100% of the time. I would pick TCU because they've proven that they can beat some top teams, 4 quad one wins. In 11 opportunities, Ohio State has 0 inside 9 opportunities. Now, the quad 3 loss and quad 4 loss are obviously influencing the strength of record and wins above bubble for TCU. However, what have you done to deserve to get in? They've beaten some top teams. Ohio State hasn't. However, I have them both in right now, so I would have Ohio State a little bit higher because they're not that fighting for that last spot. That's kind of my reasoning. Hopefully that made sense. First team out, I got New Mexico. New Mexico is very close as well. They're very close to TCU and Ohio State. I think I'll cut it off at UCLA-ish. I think UCLA, Auburn, and Texas. Texas for sure, I think is safe. Don't lose out or something like that. But I think they're pretty much safe. I think Auburn is feeling good. If I'm giving percentages, 97% chance you're getting in. UCLA will say 90% chance you're getting in. Then I think it would drop off a little bit, 85% chance Indiana gets in. Just don't lose. Don't keep losing these games. Don't lose to Ohio State. They have a game with Ohio State later in the season. And then I think there's even a gap from there to Santa Clara through TCU. It's these teams are maybe give them a 60% chance to get in. And then I would include New Mexico and USC right behind them as probably got about a 40% chance to get in. They've got a lot of work to do. But New Mexico is very, very close to TCU. They're very close to Ohio State. But these other two teams, not safe whatsoever either. Then USC, just with that loss to Oregon, just something you cannot do. And the bad news for USC, I said I'd talk about them a little bit later. This selection committee is obviously different than every year's selection committee. It changes from time to time, I believe. I guess I am not 100% sure that I feel like that's something I should know, but I believe it changes every season. But they've said that because of the JT Toppin injury, Texas Tech moved from a 3 seed to a 4 seed. They already noted that. USC was much, much better with Rodney Rice than without Rodney Rice. How are they going to take that out on USC? They say they base your team based on what team you have going into the NCAA tournament. They're not going to have Rodney Rice. Chad Baker-Mazara is banged up. I think that's going to bump them out of the tournament. They're 46th in wins above bubble and 46th in strength of record. Like I said, you want to be inside the top 45-ish. I know it's just one. That doesn't really make that much of a difference. But just without Rodney Rice, I think they're going to look at him and say, this team has not been near as good without Rodney Rice. So that's why I have USC outside right now. VCU right behind them. VCU is an interesting resume because their resume-based metrics are fine. 49th in strength of record, 48th in wins above bubble. That puts you very close to the tournament. Their predictives are pretty good, average of 45.7 across the board. However, I don't know if this team can get in that large because they're going to have to run the table and get to the A10 championship game. And say they lose to St. Louis in the A10 championship game or something. I still don't know if that's enough to get them in because they just don't have any real opportunities to move the needle in the positive direction. Virginia Tech is also in consideration. They're close. I don't think they are quite there yet. They're 52nd in strength of record, 51st in wins above bubble, but they're still close. They're 8-10 inside the first two quadrants. Remember we said Indiana 4-10 inside the first two quadrants? Now don't take those quadrants as the defining factor because, like I said, the strength of record influence is, takes into account just how good these quad one games are, how good these quad two games are. And Indiana's better in both of strength of record and wins above bubble compared to Virginia Tech, but they've proven they can beat some good teams. They're 2-6 in quad 1A. That's not too bad. They beat Virginia early in the season and they've suffered some close losses. So Virginia Tech, not dead yet. However, when you move to San Diego State, they're 58th in strength of record, 54th in wins above bubble. I don't know if they can. They do have a big one with Utah State this week. I believe it's in a couple of days. It might be on our games that we're going to preview. Can't remember if it's this week or this weekend. So they can move the needle a little bit with that one, but I don't know if they can get all. I think there's still a path if they run all the way to the Mountain West Championship game. If they were to beat Utah State again and beat, or beat Utah State for the first time, I guess it would be, and then beat, say, Boise State. Would that be the next? Or New Mexico. Beat New Mexico and on the route, maybe they can get there, but I wouldn't risk it. I think they might have to win their conference tournament. Cal is also kind of hanging around. They're 51st in strength of record, 50th in wins above bubble. However, they are with an average of 49 compared to San Diego State at 52.3. So Cal would be a little bit ahead in that aspect. But Cal's predictives are not good. They have an average of 65.3 compared to San Diego State 47.7. So that's definitely a large gap that I think would boost San Diego State ahead of Cal. Seton Hall, I don't know, especially we got to start talking the Big East. There's not a lot of opportunities for them either to really move the needle. So I don't know if they really have a path. West Virginia kind of, I think West Virginia they have a resume metric average of 63.3. That's just not good enough. 62 in strength of record, 60th in wins above bubble. Cincinnati would be the other team I want to mention. Now they're actually a little bit lower, or they're a little bit better in strength of record, 63 compared to they're a little bit worse in both. 63 compared to 62. West Virginia has the lead, and then 60 to 65 in wins above bubble. West Virginia has the lead. Cincinnati has really good predictive metrics, 46th in KenPom, 38th in Torvik, 42nd in BPI for an average of 42. 2 quad 1 wins. They do have a quad 4 loss. But the thing that put Cincinnati below West Virginia, in my opinion, is Cincinnati did lose to West Virginia not once, but twice this season. So I'd have Cincinnati as your 9th team out. Obviously, West Virginia and Cincinnati are going to have opportunities playing in the Big 12. I don't know. Actually, I guess I can pull up Cincinnati's schedule because Cincinnati's been playing really, really well. So they have to go, maybe they have some opportunities to move the needle. They have to go to Texas Tech. If you can sneak out one there, you just beat Kansas. You're getting Texas Tech without JT Toppin. Then you get Oklahoma State at home, which you should win. Then you get a home game against BYU, which you're actually favored in via BartTorvik.com by 2. If you can win that one, then you go to TCU, another bubble team. If you can win that one, you go 3-1. Maybe there is a path for Cincinnati to get there. In terms of West Virginia, let's see what their remaining schedule looks like. So that obviously we talked about that Utah loss, which was just detrimental. I don't know if they have as many opportunities to move the needle. They have to go to Oklahoma State quad 2 game. Then you have a home game against BYU. They're actually an underdog by 3 points in that one. But if they can win that one, maybe move the needle a little bit. At Kansas State and then home against UCF, neither of those are going to be quad 1 games. So not as many opportunities to move the needle. However, if it's last second and they're hey, West Virginia is the second team out, Cincinnati's the first team out, Ohio State loses yet again, and they drop out, and it's either West Virginia or Cincinnati. West Virginia did beat Cincinnati twice, so maybe they could give them a little bit of the boost there. But so I wouldn't consider those two dead. It's just because they're playing in the Big 12. It's the most top-heavy conference in the entire country. Alrighty, that's the bubble as it stands right now. Just to close out the show, let's talk about the games to watch for this upcoming week. On Big Monday, now these numbers will change as the AP poll is going to come out here in about 2 hours. Number 21, Louisville at number 16, North Carolina. Louisville favored by 2.5 on the road in that one. Caleb Wilson obviously not going to play. Henry Basar looking like he's going to play. We'll see if Louisville can have a hot shooting game in that one. And then the big one at night, the nightcap, number 2, Houston at number 8, Kansas. I would expect both of those teams to be ranked a little lower than they are right now. Houston favored by 2.5 on the road. We'll see if this Houston team can really frustrate Kansas. I think this is a really good matchup for Houston, in my opinion, because I think that if there's any guards that can defend Darren Peterson, it's probably these Houston guards. And then just the front court, like Kansas doesn't have real amazing front court depth either, just like we kind of talked about with Houston. JoJo Tugler versus Flory Badunga. We'll see if Allen Fieldhouse can just carry them to a victory. That's at 9 o'clock on ESPN. However, Bill Self is 40-0 on Big Monday for Kansas. We'll see if Houston can give them their first loss, but those are two obviously really great matchups. Moving on to Tuesday, not like the most top-heavy games, but still some solid ones starting at 7 o'clock on the ACC Network. NC State at number 14, Virginia. Virginia favored by 6 at home in that one. I want to see NC State win a game away from home. They've kind of struggled away games. I thought this NC State team was going to be better. They're still fine. They're probably like an 8 seed right now, maybe 7 seed. Curious to see if they can get one against, Virginia's solidified themselves as the second best team in the ACC. 7 o'clock ESPN, number 3, who will now be number 1 ranked Duke when the AP poll refreshes, at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is god awful. Duke favored by 15 on the road. 7 o'clock ESPN 2. We talked about it. Cincinnati at Texas Tech. Texas Tech favored by 11 in that one. Can Cincinnati get it done? Boost their resume? They've been playing like a top 15 team over the past month. Playing really good. 7 o'clock ESPN Plus, St. Louis at Dayton. That Dayton environment's always going to be tough. St. Louis favored by 6 on the road in that one. 9 o'clock SEC Network. Tennessee at Missouri. Missouri is, in need of a couple wins, but Tennessee's been on a tear. Tennessee favored by 5 on the road. 9 o'clock ESPNU. Auburn at Oklahoma. Auburn don't play around too much. Like I said, I think you're in good shape. Oklahoma's a little bit of a scary team. Auburn keeps playing these close games. Auburn favored only by 1 on the road. 9 o'clock ESPN2, Arizona, who I would expect to be ranked number 2 in the country, at Baylor. Arizona favored by 12 on the road. Baylor is also terrible this season. Bad season for Scott Drew. 9 o'clock AC Network, Miami at Florida State. Like I said, Florida State been playing really, really well. Miami only favored by 3 on the road. 11 o'clock CBS Sports Network. New Mexico needs it. You got to win it. At Nevada. Nevada is favored by 1 at home. Nevada's been scrappy. Nevada is your 4th best team in the Mountain West, them or Grand Canyon, whoever you want to pick. 11 o'clock FS1, USC in desperate need of win. These are rivals at UCLA. UCLA favored by 7 at home. USC first 4 out. UCLA last 4 by team. 11 o'clock ESPN2, UCF at number 23 BYU. Always a fun opportunity to watch. AJ Demancia, who's they're favored by 11 at home. However, it's at 11 o'clock. Not a lot of people, including myself on the East Coast, probably going to watch that one. Wednesday, a few more top-heavy games. Starting at 6:30 on Peacock, the rematch game between number 17 St. John's at number 5 UConn. UConn favored by 6 at home in that one. And then 7 o'clock SEC Network, number 12 Florida at Texas. Florida favored by 5 on the road. Georgia at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt favored by 8. Texas A&M at Arkansas. Arkansas favored by 8. Ohio State at Iowa. Ohio State, you got to have it. Iowa favored by 5 at home in that one. And then we get SMU at Cal. Cal, you got to have it. SMU favored by 2. Utah State, San Diego State. This game is this weekend. And that's not on the ACC network. I don't know if any of these are right. Any of these TV networks are actually right in this scenario. I might have forgot to change those. Utah